Wholeness, everyone. Welcome to today's show. Today is January 23rd, 2011, and today we'll be covering the real aliens in our lives. We'll be diving into a lot of information about archons and the role they play in our society, the pathogens that plague our health, and how we are to break free from this physical prison. We hope today in the show that you'll be able to gain knowledge on how a soul gets here, what methods are used to entrap the soul, and how activation will be able to release the soul. Now keep in mind, fear is just another method to keep us trapped. Always stay in your center. We will learn today at what state the body needs to be tuned to vibrate properly to activate. And we will delve into the methods one can do to clear the body of pathogens and bring it to the next phase. This knowledge is meant to assist you to better navigate in this new shift that we're coming upon. And we're all ready. This is why we are here on the resistance. Together, let's take the next step that will ultimately get us to the zone. So without further ado, here's Sevan to get us started on how to overcome aliens, archons, and the physical prison.
Wholeness and balanced vibration to everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here today, Sunday, January 23rd, 2011. And what we're going to talk about today is really just phenomenal. I wanted to first, before even getting into anything, thank everyone for being present, for giving me the energy that even when I didn't want to go on, I knew that I had to continue to go on for everyone else. And that pushed me in many different ways, and it pushed me to go beyond and push the limit and to continue to study and to not settle for what was before me or what was being offered to me, and to truly seek out what was the troubles here on this planet and why we were experiencing what we were experiencing. And I can just always remember in the beginning where it says that at times you can't handle the truth. I used to always remember that ever since a child. There was a few movies that said that. And I would definitely say that those statements were made because the truth of the matter is so far from what's really being taught and what's really understood. It is something that indeed most people could not handle. But what the resistance has consistently shown is that we're not like most people, that we're actually the faction of individuals that have decided to, instead of backing away from it or settling for something, to just continue to press on because something that was inside of us said, this is not right, this is not exactly how I remember it. And through that, we've met each other on this path, and this wonderful network, this internet, has allowed us to connect just for this moment. And although it may have different designs and different intentions, it has done something. And so the first gesture that I wanted to make to everyone is wholeness and balance, and definitely a heartfelt thank you to everyone for being here. We started this about a month ago in regards to talking about how to activate, and that we were going to just take that apart, because what we wanted to do is we wanted to have an A to Z of what a person should do to activate. And this pretty much required us to talk about and become masters of the mind, the body, and the soul. And that these three areas had to be catered to in order for a person to reach this higher state of consciousness. So first we began to deliver information to the mind. We gave people the cipher, and then we allowed them to take apart the language and understand what the words are really saying. And this in turn began to unwind their minds. It began to take them to another level in regards to understanding exactly what's taking place here and what's happening. So from there, we moved into the body. After the Cult to the Matrix was written, we continued the Resistance 2010 website and began to talk about methods of activation, such as MMS and many different things that we discovered along the path to be real remedies to the ailments that plague us every day. But we still got deeper and deeper. We continued to go into fringe, and we continued to press forward until we finally came into the knowledge of the universal language in cymatics. We got deeper into the etymology of Kabbalah and what words really mean, all the while still keeping this desire inside to want to press forward and want to know more rather than whatever we were uncovering, which started to get very strange, may daunt us in one way or another. with the body, we began to work on it. We began to offer it what it needs to survive, and we began to treat it like they say even in some of the ancient texts that you should always take care of your camel because you have to ride on it. And so this is the same thing. We had to learn how to take care of our bodies. And then finally we stopped at the soul, and we started to discover the soul had an entirely different story. The story had stretched back across aeons, across the universe, and that the mysteries that had been uncovered within the soul were just phenomenal to even be able to comprehend. And I would tell man and woman this, that the true free energy is the free energy for the body, for the real car or the ark. And until that comes to our world, we will always have the frequencies that plague us, the lower frequencies. And that's here now, and we plan on introducing that to everyone. And so what I wanted to first talk about, let me get folks a little closer to the mic here, but what I wanted to first talk about is I wanted to talk about the solution. For those that have already logged into the website, www.resistance2010.com, and seen the post for today, which was how to overcome aliens, Archon, and the physical prison. Many people have already run through that post and ingested that information. And so we'll be talking and speaking to those people first in the first part of this the show, which is scheduled for an hour and a half. And what I'm saying in regards to that is that we covered in detail the problem. So we'll begin the show with starting the solution, because I personally believe that the solution exists before the problem. So this goes into stories about men that were discovering that our true enemy was underneath the microscope, that our bodies and our health and our conditioning govern everything about us, that if we felt sick, we couldn't get up in the morning, we couldn't be happy, we couldn't do various things that would accompany a healthy person. So in the beginning, it started when talking about medicine and things of that nature, men always refer to it more on a spiritual level because it has the ability to affect your spiritual being. Your health has the ability to affect your spiritual being. And so people that have continuously practiced bad health have been under the illusion or sedation of several types of psychotropic substances, some even calibrated down to the nano, that affect the mind and the state of consciousness, but yet the human body still continues to show an immunity to these plagues. The human body shows resilience in accompany with the soul that it wants to survive. And so as we begin to adapt to these pathogens and these problems, and I will say we've definitely gotten a lot stronger now, so too the problem began to adapt itself. The pathogen itself, as they call it, began to be adapted to the host, meaning understanding how to drain a large amount of energy from the host without killing the host, because that will not benefit the pathogen. So what we find is in our body that there are multiple organisms that are feeding and leaching from the body. And those organisms in turn are actually causing us to slow down in vibration. Once we begin to slow down in vibration, then we enter into a whole vibratory frequency and we're able to be netted or sheathed inside of more dense bodies. So let me just explain it as such. Everyone, if you could just hold the line for me, I'm just going to do a quick sound check. Okay, I'm just going to switch microphones here because I was getting a little feedback. So basically, I'm glad we're 10 minutes into the show because there's a lot that needs to really be brought forth here. Also, you have to understand that I've come into a lot of information within just the last 3 days alone, and that information has me just charged with the energy of understanding and understanding. However, my mind is still calculating the ramifications of information and exactly what needs to be done. And so the first thing is definitely that people need to know exactly what's going on so that they can prepare themselves and that they have a reason to actually prepare themselves. So basically, underneath the microscope, we discover all of the pathogens. I think a little bit too loud here, but underneath the microscope, we discover all the pathogens. And many of those pathogens that we actually see are the same images of the pictures drawn from demons, because those pictures can be seen under the microscope also when you look at distorted forms. And so it would be the same thing as cymatics. If you take the negative frequency of a disease and you play it until you see an image, oftentimes you'll see very ghostly, ghastly images that are sometimes associated with our horror. So pictures actually emanate a frequency also, and a color, etc. It's all tied in. And so basically there was a lot of work to be done, and men have crossed many planes in order to give us the information of how to eradicate the pestilence from the body so that they stop plaguing our mind and manifesting themselves in our physical reality, because once we are affected internally, we then project whatever we feel internally outwardly. And so that's led to basically where we're at today, and that's what we're just basically going to talk about, is how to vibrate higher. Because what this is all about is a vibration. When you are in a low vibration or are not capable of changing your vibration very fast, you become trapped in the vibratory sphere that you have entered. So in this case, the vibratory sphere that we've entered is Earth. So Earth is also corresponds to the body. Earth is a pentagram, our body is a pentagram, or the Earth is a dodecahedron, which is the shape of a three-dimensional pentagram. And our body also corresponds to this same shape if you were seeing it astrally. So what it is really about is that we have to put our bodies back into the condition of being able to escape this body and even to come back into it at will. That is what I found to be the difference in my studies at this point between beings that inhabit various fleshly bodies, even animals at times they'll inhabit, or humans if they can inhabit, but they can transfer themselves back into the spiritual world. This gives them an extreme advantage. The fact of the matter realistically is that another being that's on the astral world can see your imperfections in your geometric shape. But you can't see your own imperfections unless you're willing to get rid of your automaton mind state of ego and envy. So what happens is that once you shed that, then you go back and work on yourself, and you realize that you have a lot of work to do. You realize that you have to tighten yourself up. You realize that definitely nothing is exactly as they said it was. And now we're figuring out what the real story is, and it's almost as simple as this. Some people ask me about the information that I present and ask me about the authenticity of it, etc. But the fact of the matter is that we would have to know something is going on from a couple integers. One, our governments have done nothing but lie to us since the beginning. In the different constitutions and things of that, we're all created equal, we all have the same opportunity, etc. All of these things have already been shown not to be correct. That's just by fact. So since we've examined religion, we find many things to be tampered with there. We examine, once again, health, and we find it to be tampered with there. So everywhere that we turn, personally as people, we find that everything that we've been told is correct and how we should ingest has actually become very toxic for us. But the immediate question would be, why is it necessary to toxify a being so much? What is their true potential if they're not toxic? So this is where you begin to reinforce whatever the fears that you may have are, which is these individuals are doing all of this, the controllers as they call themselves, or we call them. If they're doing all this to keep you into this vibratory frequency, what are you really when you return to your correct vibratory frequency? And that's also what the post also begins to talk about is our extraterrestrial origins. because there was many things that just weren't making sense to me as I was continuing to go through the information. But I began to put things together according to the symbols and things used in the occult. And that's how I began to discover not only the issue, but exactly how we needed to counteract the issue. But again, it has to be done from three angles. It has to be done from the mind, the body, and the soul. The soul must be given the energy that it takes in order to get free from the body. The soul actually begins to feed on ether or prana and cycles chi, magnetic energy, electric energies. These type of energies are what feed the spirit. So if the spirit doesn't have these type of foods or the body and substances, and the body is not calibrated properly to give one those substances, then there's going to definitely be an issue with being able to get into a high vibratory frequency, which is the only way that you can perceive some of this information if you wanted to perceive it for yourself. Remember, everything that's provided here to you is fully investigatable, and even me, myself, I every single day study and come across different things. And what I do just as a gesture is give that information to everyone so that they see exactly where we're moving at in real time across the dimension. So we're approximately 15 minutes into the show, and what I want to let everyone know is that, especially those who have read the post already, and we're also on live stream, by the way, that's www.livestream.com/Innerstanding, which is also the live stream widget that's on the Resistance website, www.resistance2010.com. What I wanted to let everyone know that we're definitely on live stream, and we're going to be walking through this post a little bit later on. But the most important part of this today is to be able to ask your questions. I want people to let go of their inhibitions, as we talked about going ahead and conquering some of the fears, even if it means questioning some of the stuff that's presented here. We ask people to call in and to ask their questions now while the information is available and while your answers are able to be accessible to you. There's no reason in waiting. It's always good to address something the moment that you have the inclination or feeling about it. So with that being said, what I would just basically say to everyone is that when you have pure blood in your body, notice how that term is used very often by the elite, it only means that your blood is free of pathogens. If you wanted to make your blood free of pathogens and the various organisms that hold down that, then it can be answered within frequency. We've introduced many different parts of frequency, and we're definitely getting to that much deeper, but it works twofold. Just because you're firing frequency at yourself doesn't mean that your body is at the proper density in order to be able to at least receive that frequency. So this is something like, what is it easier to do, vibrate a mattress or vibrate an anvil or a piece of iron? Of course, the mattress is easier to vibrate. So it's the same thing with your body. The more that you become superfluous, the more that you start to build up a current, that actually allows you to be able to change your vibratory frequency, and then at will you begin to pass through your chakra centers as far as your spirit is concerned. So I wanted to also talk about in regards to the monatomics, because there's been some individuals that have asked me about that. And what I want to say is that I've noticed that there's a new trend that's out in the esoteric world these days, which is to start to talk about or condemn things that are actually a major part of what the ascension process would consist of for an individual that's been abusing their body. Remember, most individuals that are born in places that don't have the type of a bombardment of toxins as we do, but this is pretty much, it's very difficult to find a place like this in the world now, but they do exist. But those individuals are very tapped into what's going on and when it's time to make the transition, and even already making the transitions. But for the individuals who've been raised in Western societies, or just toxic societies in general, it doesn't even have to be the Western world. The Eastern world has its own ways of holding back its citizens. And so just a person that's been born in that and raised in that atmosphere has fractalized over time their DNA because of the environment they've been immersed in. The DNA and RNA are wholly changed by the person's environment. In fact, the membrane around the DNA is responsible for actually changing the DNA. And so this means that the environment that's around you is responsible for also fractalizing your DNA. And we'll get into more about how suggestive moves from beings such as the archons keep and perpetuate humans into actually fractalizing their own bodies. And so what I wanted to get into very briefly also is a situation that is occurring that I really wanted to address for really the first time that I've addressed it on the radio. And this situation, very briefly, is in regards to Mr. Lennon Honor. There's a situation that occurred between me and Mr. Lennon Honor at a certain point, and I'm suggesting that he get in touch with me and have been for the last 6 months. And if anyone knows him, I ask that they have him get in touch with me so that we can handle the situation, so that we can do what we need to do on this planetary system. And so moving from there, what I definitely want to talk about now is I want to talk about what is the real reason a person is here. Many times we've asked ourselves this question, and what generally happens is we give ourselves the answer that fits us best at that moment. Generally, what that has a tendency to be is I'm here to learn, I'm here to share my life and have my life experience, I'm just living life. And many of these type of responses are what people generally have when you ask them, hey, why are you here? But the fact of the matter is there's many of us that feel the edge in not being able to go into our higher level of being that we've already discovered exists, and many of us have already felt the sensations that are accompanied with that. And so our biggest question to the world is, why is the world not allowing us to take advantage of our spiritual power and our spiritual being that's much more connected with all of the nature and much more connected with who we really are as beings, just in general, and entities. And what we discover is that instead of giving ourselves the kind answer that everything will work itself out, thousands of years have gone by and man has pretty much remained stagnant. That we can even conceive of inventions in our own mind that if applied to our world would take our world to an entirely different level and decrease much of the suffering and pain that's taking place. But even the most intelligent forums, such as IBM, Sony, different factions, have no consideration for the society or to implement anything that's been discovered within the past. So we ask ourselves, why is this happening? So this is the actual crossroads. Any individual that's not trying to tell themselves the truth will immediately say it's all about for a reason and it's supposed to take care of itself and let me just go back to sleep. But a real person is going to start to investigate and really get the answer to those questions. And then they start to open up a whole different Pandora box of information that literally leads down a rabbit hole and gives one information that sets them up as a hangman and turns life around on them and turns everyone in their life against them when they try to stand up for it. And then we now come to a time where all of that is over, where man can actually stand up and begin to tell the truth, that he can actually say what he's learned in the occult world and what it really presents. But we find some still are keeping their mouths shut and making it others' responsibility to tell people on this planet exactly what's necessary for them to do. And it's really because no one wants to really bear the burden anymore. No one wants to be responsible for telling people information that they can't handle. And then the mind control just as soon as make a person go back to sleep and tell them that it's not really happening. But while all this was happening, we were continuously getting stronger because this is not the first time this has happened. This has happened for years. This has happened for aeons, and that's the only reason why we're actually remembering now. Because it's now the time to act. It's time to activate. It's exactly what the minds were saying. They said at this time that we were going to know then in the world that it was time to activate. And this January we experienced all of our birds and all of our fish dying. And it didn't matter why. It didn't matter if it was our technology. It didn't matter if it was the aliens. It didn't matter. They just, because they're a fractal of us, they said something. And how many people heard? Because did they go back into their old New Age movement state of mind? Well, it's all going to work out. It's all a hologram. Even if it is a hologram, you won't protect a hologram that's dying in front of you because it's pulling on your pain and your energy. So what have we really learned? So we find out that man's mind and woman's mind wasn't capable of comprehending all the information at one time because they didn't have enough energy going through their body. The brain and the aura and all of what we consist of powers up. It begins to power up according to how much energy we stop having leach from us. And we begin to store that energy, and that energy starts to store up and it starts to build up. And then how we choose to give that energy is going to determine what direction we perpetuate into. It's like what we do with our thrust in the direction that we're going. So as I've been thrusting through the galaxy of information from every single planet, I could tell you what's going on there, what the things are like, what they're doing. I still found that there were very few that were interested in assisting the human race in what they needed to do because it was their situation. It was a major part of their emancipation and graduation into being not children, and I'll explain this to you. Just because your mother and your father is doing something that they're telling you it's okay to do doesn't mean that you can't turn away from doing it. We have to understand that. We have to understand that when one gets they said, when I was a child, I thought as a child. That means you're under the command of something else. But when you get grown, you got to get away from any idealism that's not going to work for you. Now, I'll tell you, all of these spiritual leaders and politicians and things are directly related in some way to you. So because they are elders, many of them, and older, some even been crossing 200 or 300 years, they're in essence our fathers and mothers. But just because they're making a decision doesn't mean that we have to let them make that decision for us and go with that decision. And that's literally what's at stake here. Because we're trusting other people to make decisions for us, and we haven't even tapped into where is the world really going. We're up almost for bid with the situation that's taking place here on Earth. Because the humans are not getting involved. So we're going to show people how to get involved. And we're going to show people how to exactly comprehend what's happening so when they see something, they can move faster than they normally move. And this gets into the vibratory frequency, and that's where we'll begin today's post. We're now 30 minutes in. And I wanted to give a brief moment for me to get some water and to clear the airways real fast. And then at that point, we're going to get it right into this. And also, if you want to have any questions, they can go ahead and type those questions in the chat box on the Blog Talk Radio session. In addition to that, they can they can also call in. And Satori will provide that number at some point because I do not have it here, or they can call in, and then we can see you come into the switchboard and press 1 and accept that for you. So I'm just going to take a quick moment break, and we'll be right forward.
Okay, while you do that, Sevan, I can provide the number right now. So anyone who wants to call in to the Blog Talk Radio Esoteric Radio Show, the phone number is 347-996-5688. Again, the number is 347-996-5688. And I'm also keeping my eyes locked on the chat room. If you have any questions, you can post it to the chat room on Blog Talk Radio. And I'm also keeping my eye out for the Resistance 2010 chat box as well. Just one more time, the phone number is 347-996-5688. And I'm just going to give Sevan a moment to catch his breath and get us back on this show.
Okay, it's time to come in from recess. So basically, what I was just talking about is that no one really, like I said, it moves me personally because it's easy to do something like this when you have a lot of people doing it. But when you have to be the one to do it, you understand. Like I feel like I'm very advanced. I'm very in tune with my chakra center, so it's very easy for me to feel what people feel. And I just know personally that if we just sit back and just wait, obviously by the way things are going, we would just be waiting for pretty much our demise and to get looped again and to just be, for better lack of words, sorry. to be going in and out of worlds, not even really awake, almost like drunk, and spawning and seeding worlds and breeding and not even really being able to get back in touch with our relation, our what we breed. It's a mess. It's not, it would be, it is. That is the difference. It's either it is or it's going to be. So from that point, I start this off by talking about something that I think that's been completely omitted. And that has to do with not only the serpent, but also the paranormal division, Hitler, the Theosophical Society, etc. And it's like so much information has been coming across the portal about different things. I think Dan Winter's got us really deep into Anunnaki implosion of DNA and Magdalena blood and all of these different things. And you know, Ike is definitely a great ally, and he's definitely still trying to give individuals the insight of what's really going on with their reptilian rulers. And we have who really else that's going to bring that information to the level where it's going to be ingestible by the people to get the answers to the questions, because these people still are answering the questions like, when is it supposed to happen, and why isn't it happening, and can I make it happen? How can I really get involved? And because that's like climbing Mount Meru, it's like climbing a huge structure, most people don't want to bring that forward because it makes individuals immediately turned off. But what we've done at the Resistance is we've been able to take the applications that we've been given, such as the website, such as the videos and the pictures and the illustrations that we've been able to collect over time, and make it actually illustrated for an individual to see exactly what's going on, let it resonate with them in the mind, and then allow them to make the decision on what they need to do and how they see it. And so the Resistance is not me. Well, the moment that I will post something that didn't make any sense or come out of line will be the first time one of these individuals would say, hey, this is not what I found over on this site. Can you clarify it for me? So this, in turn, always keeps me on my toes and makes me go beyond to actually present the correct information so that I am sure that the 6,000 eyes that are watching actually watch and get something that's going to get them to the next level. So what's happening in our world right now is that there have always been powers looming in the background fighting for control. And the humans, just like the Terra papers speak of, are really the prize because they don't get directly involved in it. And it's gotten to a point that even though humans, as very powerful beings, are here on this planetary system, they're not exactly exercising the energy that they have. And that's allowed a very sticky situation to occur, which means over time has continued to transpire, and factions that used to completely be depleted are full again, meaning that there were times that anybody talking to you and sympathizing with you about Nazism would be cast out, maybe stoned, or something of this nature. But the society has gotten so free, it's allowed many different things, not even just Nazism, to rise back up again unchecked. And as we see, this is happening majorly in the entertainment arena. With the recent video we saw where the Masonic propaganda was everywhere, and we're in the know enough to know what they're really worshiping. And in addition to that, we look in different places and we find that time and time again with the actors and singers, they're showing their affiliation with the darker side of things. But this has actually worked in our benefit because it's actually allowed everyone to realize that what they're looking at in front of them isn't exactly what they think it is. The more they continue to dig deeper and deeper, they realize that these people are connected to something entirely different than just a record contract or a record label or a deal. They're actually connected to something that we've only given the term the unseen hand. And then that's where most people close the book. They don't say what the unseen hand really is besides Illuminati. They don't say anything about how to actually do anything about the unseen hand besides telling everybody about it. And then from that point, that's the limitation. Where the Resistance has taken it is we've told individuals that, look, not only do we have all the data about who the unseen hand is, which is definitely extraterrestrial, we can also tell you how to become corrected, remembered, and put yourself on the right path, quickened, these type of terms so that you understand exactly what's happening and correct your orbit, for better lack of words.
And so that's always available on the site. And I wanted to make that very clear to individuals. What we're talking about here, a person should already be prepared for really being able to ingest. If they're not, they may need to run through a little bit of the MMS, a little bit of the frequencies that have been posted for the downloads, some of the cymatics that have been posted, some of the universal language stuff, and then just get in tune with it. But the fact is that we're not going to hold up the information about what's really taking place and what really needs to be done here. So what we find is that the body in itself, and I'm not going to go through this whole post directly, but I wanted to just bring out a couple points. One, I wanted to highlight the difference in how fast a being can really move, because that determines what you can really see. When something is actually moving at a faster vibratory frequency than you, a faster vibratory spectrum, then you actually can't see it. And because many of these entities are just into energy, they can tap an individual's energy in the moment that the person blinks an eye. So it's a misconception that a being that is on a high frequency is a high being. This is where the confusion has come. In addition to that, it's also confusion that a light being is just a positive being. A light being, as we talk about in the post, is just the actual vehicle that the entity is using as an expression for itself. It's actually another jar or another vehicle. What's literally happening is that we find that we're sheathed inside of several layers of protection. And each of those layers allow us to be perceptive of the frequency that they correspond to. So if we're vibrating at a certain layer, then we're perceptive of that world, dimension, or layer. And so because the individuals here are vibrating on their lower chakra root frequency, then they're aware of the material plane only. But the moment that they move into higher vibratory frequencies, they then take up another layer of their body, which doesn't become the flesh body anymore, but more of an ethereal body, and then they immediately pass into another dimension. This is also what's happening to you when you're asleep, that you're literally aware of two worlds, your waking world, your flesh world, and your dream world, which is your spirit world. Now, unfortunately, the dream world is where most of the manipulation takes place. So it is, in fact, a world where one would get back into action, too. So many of us have been reporting that the dreams are not very clear no matter what we do. Individuals that have fasted for long periods of time and purify their body, all the way up to individuals who take nothing but toxins have reported the same thing, while only a very few amount of individuals have been allowed to actually have free reign in the dream world. And we actually even know the symptoms that are accompanied with that. But basically what we see for the masses is that the dream world is being controlled because it is there that you can understand it's the training ground for your highest potential. And a person in the dream world can actually fly. A person in the dream world can unconscious in the dream world can bring up anything they want. So and actually manifest it there in front of themselves. So what that would generally cause is it wouldn't be long before that individual realized that they can actually do that in this world also with a certain time delay, which is not very large according to how much energy you have to pull in what you need, meaning that a person can use techniques to pull things out of fourth dimension or the dream world into this dimension, and there's a slight time delay in this dimension which can be decreased by the level of the person's energy, so which is magnetic energy which attracts and pulls in. So what we really have at this point is we have something before us, an actual adventure, quest, and even a mission. The current situation of the planetary system is it's been mismanaged. That time and time again, there's been corruption that has crept into the eyes and the minds of the individuals that were in charge of keeping control or keeping what I would say is a watch over the species that they were greater than. And so what generally happens in this case is situations that have taken place, from my understanding, all over the galaxy, which is where you have a predatory faction that does not really respect a person's ability to want to be peaceful and can actually invade their world and begin to take things over. Now, if people don't think that that's actually happening, they should stop looking at themselves and start looking at some of these very peaceful people that are coming into our world now, such as in other countries that are at war, children even, and that's how those peaceful people are being abused still. So this will let us know that this is not a game. This is not something that's not happening. This is something that few people can do something about, but it doesn't take that many to do something about it. This is requiring people that actually have this ability to take in this information and to radiate this information into the environment so that the environment begins to respond with a solution. People that stop emitting negative waves and frequencies because of what they just injected, thus perpetuating the negative force of the network, but begin to push back into the network positive energy that floods the network, and actually we can take back the network. See, the key here is after you read this post, you'll realize that realistically we're going to need Earth for a few different types of transitions that we need to get other people prepared for, meaning one can think about themselves all day and get themselves into a high level of ascension, etc. But the fact of the matter is this whole thing, even the reason this website is here, is to really get other individuals into the higher levels of things. So it's no use in stopping now. What this is really about is we have to get people from this system, out of this system, and into the great beyond, as they call it, totality of things. But the only way to do that is to bring them through the proper transition phase. So what we've been doing is we've been working on our shields. We've been working on getting ourselves into higher states of consciousness. We've been working on getting heavy levels of information, as many people could see that the resistance information has picked up, and not like it wasn't already shabby. It wasn't shabby at all, but it's picked up greatly. Even in my life personally, I've seen so many different things, and it's just allowed me to really come to the conclusion of what's happening and get to the point of, okay, this is what I need to do. That's what the most necessary thing is about a transformation. You have to be fully aware of the whole situation so that your mind can understand the way out. Remember, the way out is inside. All you have to do is come out of the body. And to do that, you change your vibratory frequency. I will say it's as simple and as complicated as that. So who's running interference? Interference is going all through the airwaves all day. This is a fact. There's tons of Wi-Fi. There's tons of suggestive frequency. There's tons of spiritual beings. So because the human being is more or less an antenna and a receptor for energy, the human being is spent all day exhausting their energy. It's literally every morning they get up with a certain amount of energy, their energy wad, and then every day they blow their wad on what they want, and then by the end of the night they're broke. So their day resets again. And at this point, we can now get a person to a level where the person's energy does not run out, that they begin to have more or less a perpetual energy, and we're also on the brink of discovering even more things which will allow a person to learn the universal language, the original language spoken through the universe, so that they can also reconfigure their body to get to where they need to be. Because the real situation here is that everyone is from different places, some from the same places definitely, but there are all different types of beings here. And so what I wanted to read off very briefly is the possible reasons why a person could be on this planet Earth, which we know now is a prison planet. And I will say for the record, just because you're in prison doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. Earth is a place often that keeps artistic and eclectic people that don't blend in well in the hive mind of some of the conquered planets of the empire. They ship them here, and then even they allow them at times to get famous and even to do different things. But the fact of the matter is they're not even living to their full potential. Still imagine many of the individuals that we talk about now that have utilized their energy and talents to bring out filth still are individuals and souls that could have actually used that to bring out something positive, because these individuals, too, also have something very special about them that allows people to be attracted to them. It's just their energy is being channeled. And so what I wanted to talk about is there's a section in the post that's quite far down, but it says, are humans really ready to go universal and meet off-world beings like they claim? Or will their fear continuously get the best of them? And what this is really about is we have become so enclosed by our fear, it's a conscious state of paranoia all the time. A person's afraid if they can't pay their bills. They're afraid if they're not going to be accepted. They're afraid if their credit card gets declined. They're afraid if they get late for work. They're afraid if they eat something and there's something even in there. It even gets even worse. So the fact of the matter is that all of this can be thwarted by simple preventive maintenance, meaning you stick to your regimen of what you know you need to do for your body, And then you know automatically that whatever you do on this path, you're still going to end up far better off than the person that's not doing it. As they say, you don't have to be the fastest person if a bear is chasing you. You just have to be faster than the slowest person. It's obvious the individuals here, there's going to be many of them that don't catch on and are going to be moved into the next world that they have built for them. But it's also obvious that there's going to be many individuals that get into the higher states of consciousness and maybe even devise a plan how to get them out. See, people don't want to realize the ultimate goal. They want to immediately shut their mind off and say, oh, no, everyone's ascending. Well, that's not the plan. The plan is actually for individuals to start ascending, figure out what that's actually about and where we're actually going to be going and what that all entails, and then help other individuals get to that level. Wishful thinking, and people need to understand that you need intention. Like when you're going through space, you have to engage it. It's just like the Akashic Records. The Akashic Records just doesn't give you information. You have to access it, and then it responds. If you're tapped into it, any question you ask can be answered, but you must engage it first. This is how most beings or living entities are anyway, to respect the rights of other beings, is that you don't intrude on them first. If they need something from you, then you actually assess what they're about and service them according to what your duty is in the universe. So I talk about here very briefly on why some of the individuals could be here. So first I state that this soul has been trapped and or kidnapped from their planet or homeworld by the empire, dominion, or affiliations, and is being kept as a trophy and or is being harvested for energy. Some of these homeworlds have been destroyed or remain under empire control. In some cases, a soul has been kidnapped, and that homeworld is still attempting to find that soul. It's now time for us to fess up to it. They are referring to the spiritual state that we're in as imps, and they call themselves emperors, meaning lord over imps. So at this point, we've already understood that how they see things, is that there is a controller and it's holding us back. We can find more data to find out that they go under the title the Empire, and it's come under many different rulerships, but it's still the same show. The spice must flow. So going from there, it says this soul was not conforming properly to the hive mind on the planet they used to reside on that came under empire control. The empire generally rules through a hive neural network very similar to our internet but organic. This way, they are tied into everything in everyone's mind for ease of command and, of course, to eliminate any type of feeling of privacy. Many in this situation would not conform or were immune to bliss, which causes a person to not care what is really going on. They give all controls of decision-making over them to the controller. Because of nonconformity, they were contained and shipped to Earth. So once again, we find that the eclectic individual and the individual that is actually not conforming to the hive mind is generally placed as a rebel, for better lack of words. And so what's literally happened here on Earth is that there's been so many intelligent minds that the intelligent minds are making a push to take back the reality. See, with you have to understand that how deep are we in the quadrant? If we were on the rim of where, for better lack of words, the good guys are, then they would have already came in. But they say the actual position of Earth is so deep into the Empire Quadrant that one would need to basically implode from here, meaning that you could beacon and leave from here, but you can also return. See, the main thing is that you want to understand and get familiar with getting in and getting out. These are the most useful things on the dimension to allow individuals to actually assist individuals in getting into the next plane. That's what the real position is that's available in the universe, is how to go into worlds like Earth and pull the sleep population out of its sleep, which is like waking up a child from its nap that it really wants to keep sleeping, and then instruct them on what to do, which sometimes if they're on a very dense sleep, because other beings that are very graduated have a tendency not to sleep, and wake these beings up and say, hey, look, you can get into a higher level of things. You actually can go quantum. You have the ability to tap into all there really is. And what's really been happening to you is that you've been somehow netted. your body is configured and holding you in, but there's a key to your body, and that's what's really understood within much of the occult teachings, if you can actually encrypt them, is that the secret, if one understood the secret of this body or this pentagram shape, then they would be released from the prison. If they somehow got it wrong, however, then they would be even further confined. So it's interesting because even when you look at structures such as the Pentagon, as a two-dimensional building, it's shaped like a pentagon. So on a three-dimensional level, it's actually a pentagram itself. So it's literally a world within a world. So anyone that steps into that world is subject to what they have those individuals under the influence of. And it's the same thing with also many of the temples and churches that are around the earth, almost all of them, stepping into those areas. Even though you can't see what's going on, there's many things going on. And so that's where we really have to understand that. Moving into those different vibratory wavelengths, being sensitive to energy allows us to feel and use our senses. The human being has more or less tentacles that stream from their body that connect them into this network. I'll explain once that basically the human being is not too far off of the amphibian-type being, meaning that there's many things about the human body that is actually connected to the amphibian and the reptilian. But the fact of the matter is that the need for water is so important that the mist that's in our air is still absorbed by the body. Remember, if you were a being that was completely foreign to water, you would still look at our water levels as really high, and even the possibility that we were still swimming in water. But we don't see it as that because of our atmosphere and how we conceive our atmosphere. So the fact is that the human body is tied into this neural network that has a conductor of water. And so an individual continuously purifying their water through their system is actually purifying their level of communication so that you can block out unwanted communication. This is how you begin to firewall your mind. Your mind can be firewalled by blocking certain frequencies out. There's some certain things that we're going to be showing individuals, and I'll actually be posting some of those things on Monday about how to keep actual bubble of basically clear air so that you can meditate in. Don't get me wrong. An individual needs to be able to deal with this society and what's going on if they're to be equipped to deal with and help and assist other people. And also I'll tell a person, if you're thinking about, honestly, this whole thing just about helping yourself, you're not going to be able to have enough energy to make it, because the biggest lesson that has to be learned is that teamwork. We have to begin to get with each other and begin to connect with each other and do something about this. And then some individuals will back off all this and say, well, this is not even true. I don't even believe this is true. And then they'll just sit back. And then they'll just twiddle their thumbs. And then because nothing's really happening in their life, they can actually see why they keep saying that. Because it's not true that they're not really ready for this. And so the fact of the matter is that I would suggest that a person starts to tell their mind, you know what, I am ready for this. I am ready to have a reason why I need to get my spiritual condition together. I can connect much of this stuff that's written here. That is obviously a level of control that's going on here that's been unchecked. That is obviously that there's many souls here that are not being treated properly and are being abused from one level or another, and that even happening to oneself. It's obvious that over time, as we're made to endure certain things, that we become more familiar with it and even forget about it. But this is not time to forget about it anymore. Before, as many people know, that much of our mission was dedicated towards delivering certain levels of information, but always keeping a certain threshold to it to let individuals know that they have time to figure this situation out and that they should actually take it a little bit easy and not stress themselves out. We're now changing gears. It doesn't mean that you stress yourself out. It just means that you can now get ready to prepare yourself for the next phase of what you've been trained to do. And that's about giving the information to your brothers and sisters. It's about quickening them and getting them into what's going on. Like I said, there's much more covered here in this particular post than I'm talking about on the phone. We're going to continue our session with how to activate the body. We're going to start exploring deeper into Kundalini and exactly how it's activated as I go through the process myself. And that's what this is all going to continuously do. This is by far the end. We've now identified the level of control in many of the individuals that are involved, and that also gives us the coordinates to the quadrants to steer away from, which is what individuals have to learn to do. All they have to do is begin to preserve enough energy that they're able to actually win this circumstance that's taking place within their body, this lowering of the vibratory frequency in order to keep you on a level that you're so much higher than. And so at this point, as we're almost at the top of the hour, I'm going to take this time to allow Satori to say anything that she may need to say. I also wanted to thank her for being able to be on the line today and host the line and to give us the information that she's been providing to us, which has been definitely wonderful. And also, if there's any questions that need to be asked at this point, this would be definitely the time.
Oh, thank you, Sevan. Yes, there's actually questions on here, and before I get into that, I really like how you stress the fact that we need for water is important, and especially whatever foreign pathogens that we have in our bodies, we need to drink a lot of water, and I like how there's always that information out there on MMS and to get the water purified. So, I think that's a great thing for people if they wanted to start detoxing. The first thing to start doing early in the day is just to get, a couple of glasses of water in you before you do anything else. So with that said, I'm going to get into the questions there for you, Sevan. And the first question is, can you talk more about shields, how to create them, and how to use them? And that's a question from the Blog Talk Radio chat there.
Okay. That's actually a great question. Let me just, can you hear me okay? Because
you're just breaking up a little bit, but yeah, I can still hear you.
I want to get off this thing. Okay, I'm just adjusting my sound here, but you should be able to hear me okay now. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so this gets into, I'm glad that's a great question, because this gets into a major part of the show that we wanted to discuss also, which is astral hygiene. What was basically uncovered in this post is, and also through Stefan's Cardinal's work, which was passed to us by John Shore, and I know John's listening or will be listening. I want to say thanks to John for passing that information. And basically, Stefan Cardinal, who has advanced equipment to test the ley lines, had begun to discover that the churches were actually configured to amplify individuals' energy that were standing in certain places, churches where the pastor would stand and deacons would stand, and amplify in areas where a person would basically open themselves up, like an altar, etc., and then and then outside the church, of course, begin to decrease the energy. And so from this level, we began to understand certain terminology such as astral hygiene, which was it made a big deal to what kind of structure you were in, and this also can be applied to the body. Think of the fractal here. It makes a big deal of what kind of structure you're in. Also, what kind of, let's talk about purifying the body. The Arabs have this thing where they say they laugh at the Americans because the Americans don't know how to clean themselves. And what this is really about is that when you get into the shower, there's like a lot of work that needs to be done in the ears and behind the ears and into the crouch and into the growing area, almost as if you're detailing a car. And that becomes the difference between whether you have certain energies hanging out on the largest organ of your body, which is the skin. In addition to that, many of the oils actually really cause a layer, like we talked about. It's a synth or synth. It's one layer of something that can basically thwart any being moving on that level. So because we know that aroma is, means Venus, but because we know aroma is actually actual gas. When you put something like, let's say, just the camphor, for instance, into the air, then all the beings that's repugnant for move out of the vicinity. And so a great part of a person's, I'm not saying you should wear camphor. There's many oils that you can actually wear. I believe White Angelica is one of those oils from Young Living. And I'll actually do a post on this on Monday and give people all the links that they need. But basically these oils give you one layer of protection. Now, of course, one doesn't always have to rely on oils. There's the other level of things where a person can visualize the egg, as I call it. And generally the ultraviolet light is, because it's the highest light on the spectrum, tends to make one become more or less difficult to approach on the astral dimension if they feel like they're being hindered in some type of way or another. in addition to that, in your home, in your personal space, you have things such as the orgone. The orgone is very important to actually cause the environment to purify itself. There's a big part of the environment, even some of the orgone I put on my organs, because we're organized beings, and when we lose our order, then that's when we start to come out of line with understanding exactly what's taking place. And so what literally needs to happen is that a person could use orgone to pull negative things out of their body. And in fact, I actually forgot about that until this point. A major part of the transition that took place in the first page of the book was I had an orgone, a small one that was about the shape of a medallion, and I had got it from a crystal store, and it just had some orgone in there. And when I slept that night, this thing had gotten so hot because obviously it had been pulling a lot of the negative energy out of me. But the lady did make it clear that the small ones needed to be thrown away after they had absorbed some of the negative energy. And so what I'm saying is that there is this part of this study. And again, we're in real time, so there's many people that need to step up and help figure some of this stuff out and get diagrams on it, get going in the laboratory, etc. But we have enough data to know, okay, the correct orgone built the proper way, and there's some professionals at orgone, can pull negative stuff out of your body. And then from that level, your shields go up. So instead of looking at it as you have no shields, look at it as the shields are actually low. That's really what's happening.
Okay, Sevan, and I have another question on here, and it's talking about radio frequency identification chips. So this person is asking that, that it is a reality, and how can a person change the frequency of a radio frequency identity chip, and can that person still ascend if they're being distracted by the manipulate the auditory sounds of the implant? So if someone has an implant, how can they change the frequency, and can that person still ascend?
First, if anyone's reading the book of Dr. William Baldwin Seavey, which is also available on the site, even in audio, we learned that there's several different types of implants. In fact, the RFID seems to be a very crude version of an implant. There is actually more of like an organic implant that is ethereal. But the cure for all of these implants is vibratory frequency. Generally, any of these implants are actually running on a certain current that's congruent with the actual density that the being is attempting to communicate on. So remember, science has shown a few things, and then it's gotten demonized because of the name and mixing in its culture. So the fact of the matter is that science and frequency are not the same thing. Frequency existed before man even showed up. So the fact of the matter is frequency is more like organic. So from a level of frequency, that's how one can kind of tell everything that's going on. And so with someone that's carrying a very low frequency, it becomes more or less fractalized. The way to actually perfect that is that the person can harmonize their frequency and then it comes back together. Then what they then become is that they actually start to be able to really change the frequency. Does that make sense? Am I answering the question properly?
I think so. And also the person wanted to know, will an orgone affect the frequency of the chip?
Okay, remember, so just sometimes I lose my train of thought. People have to help me with that because my mind is like in a lot of places at one time.
Right.
The RFID chip, again, when a person goes into a higher vibration, any of the things that are in their body, they short out. So we experienced this in the session that was in the beginning of the book, but I cannot say 100% that I identified that that's what that was. But I had intuition at that point, very strong intuition, because that awakening was accompanied with certain abilities, and I knew that the gentleman in the room with me had coughed up something that seemed to be very slimy. It was literally like something very slimy with a small electrode in it. And he spit it in the toilet, and instantly he flushed it as if he knew or was still being somewhat told to, hey, get rid of that. So the fact of the matter is that what changed it, though, was because when he came in contact with me, which I was in high vibration, and he touched me, it caused him to go into high vibration. And this is where there's an extreme optimism with me as far as what's actually going to take place here on Earth. Like I said, I'm just really about getting right to the story so I know what I need to do because I'm a very equipped being. The fact of the matter is that many of us have come and we've shed sheaths of our memory, like we talked about before, that memory is like a tree. It's like auric layers or rings around your body. And when you come into atmospheres that are very dense, you have to shed off those rings. And those rings contain very valuable information, especially in regards to your mission. However, you generally keep your core, and your core is going to tell you everything that you are. So if your core is good, generally if you get activated, you're here to do a good mission. And that's really the integers to determine whether a being is going to be malevolent or benevolent. And I also understand malevolent beings have been changed around all the time. That's what the book about Dr. Sevi is really talking about, is that there's also another universal position that's really being called on for individuals to bring some of those beings that don't think they have energy and light anymore because it's been pulled away from them so much. This is the same thing as an individual that's been under a lot of abuse, and they are so abused that it's very hard to tell them that someone is not going to abuse them and that society is wrong. So understand that there are spirits that are roaming around like that, and many of those spirits need to be treated in some type of way or another, and that's just what they call another calling. So that's pretty much what I want to say about the RFID. I don't really want to get into saying too much about what we can do against it because, that crosses into other boundaries. But what I will say 100% is that when your body is vibrating higher than the actual implant, the implant malfunctions. At times, if the body goes back into the same vibratory frequency, the implant activates again.
Very good. And, Sevan, I have a call here on the switchboard, and I'm just going to try and to get the caller in. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, let me just see if that works. 1 second. Hello, caller? Hello, caller? Area code 312, go ahead. Hello?
Okay, they may just be calling in.
Yeah, I'm going to try again later. Okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask you a quick question. There was one time you were talking about cleanses that an individual can do, especially on the skin, and you mentioned that the skin is a very important organ that we have to keep cleansed. And is it okay if you can get into that just for a quick minute about the cleanses that you can do for the skin?
Definitely. What we need to do now is we have to become a little aggressive. Meaning that for this to really happen for you, for it to really be pulled off, you're going to have to lose the timid approach at times with people. This is the best advice that I can give everyone. What you really need to get your hands on is a steam room, a dry sauna. Either a wet sauna, the wet sauna that's like the dry sauna, or just a dry sauna. And taking yourself into temperatures above 120, 130 degrees. Because at this point, the sweat comes from the pores so profusely that, in reinforcing with things like chlorophyll, starts to clear those tubes that are coming through the pores, which are very connected to the lymphatic system. Now remember, the lymphatic region is actually when your soul or your layers is passing through your body, you need it to pass through basically clear tubes. And what happens with most individuals is because when they're toxic, their skin clogs up. That's with everyone. When they get toxic, the skin clogs up, and then the spirit gets trapped under the skin. Because remember, it's still all layers. Some of this stuff is not as complex as it really sounds, especially if this was the first thing that we were being taught. Okay, so that's pretty much it. It's pretty much simple with the layer, and I guess I've gone through a little bit more on that.
Another thing also.
I can actually finish. I have a little bit more to give on that. I do apologize. Again, my mind is moving very fast at this point. So basically, once the skin starts to sweat, what you want to do is you want to apply something like the Himalayan salt. Because what's happening is that the body is crystalline, and of course, if you even see your urine tastes like salt, so everything is really a crystalline network. And so what happens is that the salt is generally a neutral crystal, so it can absorb negative energy from crystals. And so when you get down to that deep sweat and rubbing that salt in there and leaving it on, and then, of course, rinsing it off at a certain point. Here's what we also learn to be the last step of the process, and I thank Dr. Theodore Thomas, which we will see a video on with the O3 Institute, for inventing this process off of his epiphanies. Very gifted person. But he has something he calls the kick, which is after these successions or levels into this dry sauna, when you pretty much got rid of a great deal of the toxins, but your body is very hot. Then he drops you into a tub of cold water. And he says that at that exact moment when you hit that water, you're actually in no time again because of the shock. And it's that point where you can move certain things around. Now, this, of course, is his this is his formula, and I definitely benefited from that formula myself. But I would just say on a medical level, when you drop into that tub, not only does doing that, going from hot to cold, strengthen your immune system, but when the pores tighten up, they also give an extra squeeze of any other toxins that may still be left in there, or some of them that's still in there. Because remember, you want to run through as many of these processes as you can, of course, within the limitations of your body.
Thank you so much, Sevan. I'm going to try that call again to see if the person is available. Just give me one quick second, okay?
Okay.
Hello, go ahead, caller. You're on the line. I guess they hung up there. I have another question from the chat box. And an individual is asking, I was born with muscular dystrophy, and can you figure out why or how to escape from it?
There's many people that are on the resistance site that are very proficient at investigating some of these ailments and getting right to the meat of it. And we have many different things that I'm posting. I have the universal frequency list coming. The situation that's happening over here, again, is because there's so much to do, and then there's a limited amount of individuals doing it. So what's literally happening now is that we're getting the information to everyone, and we're also rushing to set up our facility so that we can continuously, or basically we have to experiment with some of these things before we can tell individuals, yes, this actually works. We know certain things that it works for, but to tell someone directly it works for this without being proficient in the ailment itself would be non-correct. And so what we really have coming is this universal frequency list allows a person to look through it. Actually, it's going to be up, it should be up by Tuesday. But it allows a person to look through it, and then because this has never been published on the Internet before, what you'll actually notice is there's many different diseases and different situations with the body, even with the muscles, with the nerves, etc., and they have frequencies to treat that. So it's very extensive. This is not a list that you're going to look at and you're not going to be able to find something that is possibly very close to the situation. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to speed up the process because I actually have to type in the brainwave frequency list. So I'm going to actually just speed up the process and make sure that gets to you a lot sooner. And then I'm sure not only myself but other individuals that are more into the health end of the resistance, as I've definitely been called to the front lines again, can follow the necessary procedures. And then there's also, we have the GB4000 here, and what I want to start doing is being able to transcode what's coming from the GB4000 into some type of FLAC or lossless format, which is a format that you can utilize with the sound that could possibly give you the extra frequencies that are necessary when recording to allow the sound from the GB4000 to be the same as if it's coming from the actual device, but playing it from another device from your home. And so I believe personally, like, this was one of the biggest transformations that I made really this month, because I started to see that a person that spends their time in healing individuals are really unique people. And when I started thinking about that, just from a health standpoint, though, like if a person is sick, and then I was, of course, immediately confronted and I was told, well, Sevan, you heal people, you heal the mind. And I said, yeah, but there's a sort of a difference when a person also is physically sick and that you can actually clear their sickness. And I would suppose anyone that came here to do that and started to do that could never really go wrong in the universe. They could always count on something coming to assist them. And so that's why I started to focus a lot of my time was in studying how to adapt what I was doing and studying over into, like, basically use my quantum processing brain to get individuals into higher levels of health and activation. And so I definitely know that we will have something for you. To tell you exactly what it is right now would be a little bit premature because I have to go into the files.
Thank you, Sevan. I did get that call again. I hung up on that caller. Actually, sorry, that person hung up again. So I think that's it for questions. If there's anything else you want to add, we have 14 minutes left on the show, and I'll just give it back to you if you have anything else that you wanted to add.
Okay, sure. You said there's 14 minutes left in the show?
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's no problem. I can definitely go through 14 minutes. So I will tell some things that I found quite interesting. Because I did, like I said, I put all this in a post, but I was even amazed at how it was clicking together in regards to the trident, the Dorje rod, and things of that nature. But basically what I found is that I had been hot on the trail for the pentagram for a long time, and I couldn't really understand why it had such a negative connotation to it, but at the same time it seemed to be something very positive that an individual needed to understand about it in order to be able to graduate, since it was used so much. And being able to finally crack into that the geometric shape of the flesh, not the spirit itself, but the flesh is a pentagram, that gives a lot of credit to why that symbol is often flashed around by occultists as the symbol of, hey, I know something that's deeper and I can control you with this. And so I wrote the statement, the pentagram is mightier than the sword, coming from the statement, the pen is mightier than the sword, my lord. But actually what they're really referring to is that the pentagram, or to keep a person contained, is better than actually killing them, because you can actually utilize their energy. And this is a big step for us to even accept is going on, but all of the evidence is all around us that it's actually happening, even being the reason why most states like to put that on their flag, because other countries like to put that on their flag, because there's still regions that are binding spirits within their region and harvesting those spirits and starting societies, etc. But what we find in the alien interview is that much of the information that's really being delivered to us are stall tactics, that literally we are doing as the consciousness in a race exactly what they want us to do. Now it's time for us to move in mysterious ways. And this really requires us to basically start to understand exactly what they're doing, like understanding what this pentagram is doing, is understanding exactly how to stop it from working, understanding that the code of ISIS is the SS, and that the word IS is related to Sion, and then the Psi is actually the connection with the gods of the ocean that carry the trident, and that the trident is also even carried as a pitchfork by the devil, and that obviously they're all connected with the same bloodline, that it starts to give one a lot more clarity. And so anytime someone shows up with the trident in hand, then a person knows exactly what they're here to do. Those individuals are here to herd the people. They're shepherds, but the sheep are the people. And to even accept that is to even say, yeah, I have a shepherd over me, starts to already show a person how deep they've got into this. And another thing is that when I was looking at is when monotheism began, I can remember a very big moment in my mind where I decided that I wanted to go monotheistic, because I felt like personally that there would be less confusion and there would be more access to the pure energy. Never could I be more wrong. The higher knowledge has taught me now that when you believe that there is only one God, it sets up in your mind that you're not that God according to the doctrine, and that there is only one being that's of that type of caliber. This immediately locks you into a vibratory frequency that's not higher than the being that put you here. And so that's really the catch-22, as I call it, with everything, is that you have to look at it deeper, put away your fear. That's what most people are, fear-based. That's how the God tends to rule over them. Put away your fear and examine it. Know that even after you fear, you'll still be here, as I say. And then this really allows you to actually go into it and figure out what's going on, and this is being allowed now. See, before, of course, this wasn't being allowed. Some of the stuff that we're talking about right now has never really been talked about before, and we have much, much more. We're actually about to release the image library, which is now to 6,000 images, because I've purged it of anything that wasn't extremely extremely catchy or something that you really, really wanted to look at. And so basically I wanted to end this with saying this, that the a major part of this, and that's why I did mention that situation earlier in regards to Lenin, is a major part of what we're dealing with right now is being able to right our wrongs. Being able to actually accept where we may have been in folly because of something that we see we clearly gravitate to. As I mentioned in here, many of the people that are involved in the armed forces and things of that nature were actually members of the Draconian Empire, and they were actually exiled here, and their memories are wiped, and they don't even know that they are not even being accepted by the higher levels, for better lack of words, and they're just here causing chaos on Earth. There's a lot of interference itself being run on Earth right now, and that's really what we're getting into understanding we need to decrease. How much, like I said before, energy are we giving out to suggestive thoughts? Meaning that if these individuals are behaving as such, and then we're interpreting their behavior as something that we're supposed to be doing, how much is that really affecting us? And so finishing this off, what I'll say also is that this is now a time that we will become equipped. Many are feeling like all of a sudden that they need to protect themselves in some type of way or another. The greatest protection, of course, is within the mind. But I've posted many things about the Dorje rod, and I posted things about the crystals and the powers of the gems. I encourage people to actually begin to investigate some of these things deeper and to see if they resonate with some of this stuff in order to have that internal inclination of what they need to do. Also understanding that we're here for everyone. Now is the greatest opportunity to get the information. Like I said, this is not a lost cause whatsoever. All this is a reason to do what we need to do. And we know that other than that, we would just be sitting around all day listening to someone give us some type of information on whatever subject we found to be interesting at that point. But this is totally different. This is now where you're actually being put back into the driver's seat. We're asking people to keep tuning in. We're asking people to invite your friends along also and to send them requests, send some of these posts to them, get them in the know so that we can continue to reach out to more people, because even on our end, there's many different things that we need. You can only imagine. Some of this information that's coming across the portal is revolutionary. If it can be put into the proper format and introduced to the people, then we would see change quick. Remember, they talk about how technology will give us major advancements in our world. The fact of the matter is people just understanding what's going on first and then being able to accept that is going to be the major advancement, because at that point it's going to allow them to say, okay, now I know what's going on and I want to get involved. This is actually interesting. But if we don't do that for them, then we leave them in the same position, and this is not going to help us, because the only way this can really be done is if it's done within numbers. It has to be a larger part of the total consciousness that begins to agree with this. And I also believe that we have a lot of the assistance of what we're calling the higher beings in the earth and things of that nature, but ultimately as our population, because of us succumbing to the suggestiveness of some of these beings, we're personally being held back. And so that's something that we're going to be able to correct here. And remember that a lot of this correction comes within the mind, that there's a big part of how we think that's affected by the body, that they're all intertwined together, and so it's about being harmonic. And so much of what we've been doing also these days is utilizing the harmonic frequencies that are associated with the organs and putting those frequencies within the body and seeing what the results are that are accompanying having perfected organs. And again, introducing a format. I've been talking to other members on the Resistance who actually have experience and even degrees in sound. So it's also about getting this stuff in a format in which you can actually use it and benefit from it. And so how much more time do we have left? So I think we have about 4 minutes left.
5 minutes. 5 minutes, yeah, 4 or 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. So, like I said, in the beginning of this message, I was really pointing out one thing, and that was my gratitude towards everyone that's been on the Resistance, all the individuals that have assisted us with their information, with finances, with their experience, with just the all-out support and showing that they're here. And it's just really one of those things where even if it was one person on the Resistance, I would still be there. So the fact is, because that's how it began, and that's what everyone should really understand also is that something like this can begin with anyone. The only thing about me is I just had a high level of comprehension, and within us as children, we're all brave. It's just society attempts to remove that braveness from us with fear. And now it's being restored. That braveness is being restored because there's a certain level of desperation that's going on here. We, as even conscious beings and having subconscious minds, can kind of feel that there's something that we need to pay attention to and that's going on right now. And that's exactly why I believe also that this information is coming across. As I say, when the student is ready, the master appears. There's only still 3,000 people on the resistance site, so that means there's a very small percentage compared to everyone else in the world. So everyone that is getting this information can consider themselves as definitely one of the guided, because they are receiving this information exactly in the time that they need to. And that's how we've always been. We take the step, and then it appears. So I would like to say, once again, wholeness and balanced vibration. I'm here in the studio with Carlos and Ugo, and we've definitely been working around the clock to get this message to you and present everything to you in the proper format. So we wanted to say wholeness and balanced vibration to everyone on the resistance. And once again, thank you, Satori, for hosting the call today and for giving us your information and being a valuable member of the resistance.
Thank you, Sevan, and just want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us today on Esoteric Radio, Blog Talk Radio. And again, I want to say thank you to Carlos, Ugo, and Sevan, and everyone on the Resistance for all your hard work. This is amazing information that you put out. And thank you so much, everyone, for posting your questions, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Take care.
That's led to basically where we're at today, and that's what we're just basically going to talk about is how to vibrate higher. Because what this is all about is the vibration. When you are in a low vibration or are not capable of changing your vibration very fast, you become trapped in the vibratory sphere that you have entered. So in this case, the vibratory sphere that we've entered is Earth. So Earth is also corresponds to the body. Earth is a pentagram. Our body is a pentagram, or the Earth is a dodecahedron, which is the shape of a three-dimensional pentagram. And our body also corresponds to this same shape if you were seeing it astrally. So what it is really about is that we have to put our bodies back into the condition of being able to escape this body and even to come back into it at will. That is what I found to be the difference in my studies at this point between beings that inhabit various fleshly bodies, even animals at times they'll inhabit, or humans if they can't inhabit, but they can transfer themselves back into the spiritual world. This gives them an extreme advantage. The fact of the matter realistically is that another being that's on the astral world can see your imperfections in your geometric shape, but you can't see your own imperfections unless you're willing to get rid of your automaton mind state of ego and envy. So what happens is that once you shed that, then you go back and work on yourself, and you realize that you have a lot of work to do. You realize that you have to tighten yourself up. You realize that definitely nothing is exactly as they said it was. And now we're figuring out what the real story is, and it's almost as simple as this. Some people ask me about the information that I present and ask me about the authenticity of it, etc. The fact of the matter is that we would have to know something is going on from a couple integers. One, our governments have done nothing but lie to us since the beginning. In the different constitutions and things of that, we're all created equal, we all have the same opportunity, etc. All of these things have already been shown not to be correct. That's just by fact. So since we've examined religion, we find many things to be tampered with there. We examine, once again, health, and we find it to be tampered with there. So everywhere that we turn, personally as people, we find that everything that we've been told is correct and how we should ingest has actually become very toxic for us. But the immediate question would be, why is it necessary to toxify a being so much? What is their true potential if they're not toxic? So this is where you begin to reinforce whatever the fears that you may have are, which is...
Wholeness, everyone. Welcome to today's show. Today is January 23rd, 2011, and today we'll be covering the real aliens in our lives. We'll be diving into a lot of information about archons and the role they play in our society, the pathogens that plague our health, and how we are to break free from this physical prison. We hope today in the show that you'll be able to gain knowledge on how a soul gets here. what methods are used to entrap the soul, and how activation will be able to release the soul. Now keep in mind, fear is just another method to keep us trapped. Always stay in your center. We will learn today at what state the body needs to be tuned to vibrate properly to activate. And we will delve into the methods one can do to clear the body of pathogens and bring it to the next phase. This knowledge is meant to assist you to better navigate in this new shift that we're coming upon. And we're all ready. This is why we are here on the resistance. Together, let's take the next step that will ultimately get us to the zone. So without further ado, here's Sevan to get us started on how to overcome aliens, archons, and the physical prison.
Wholeness and balanced vibration to everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here today, Sunday, January 23rd, 2011. And what we're going to talk about today is really just phenomenal. I wanted to first, before even getting into anything, thank everyone for being present, for giving me the energy that even when I didn't want to go on, I knew that I had to continue to go on for everyone else. And that pushed me in many different ways, and it pushed me to go beyond and push the limit and to continue to study and to not settle for what was before me or what was being offered to me, and to truly seek out what was the troubles here on this planet and why we were experiencing what we were experiencing. And I can just always remember in the beginning where it says that at times you can't handle the truth. I used to always remember that ever since a child. There was a few movies that said that. And I would definitely say that those statements were made because the truth of the matter is so far from what's really being taught and what's really understood. It is something that indeed most people could not handle. But what the resistance has consistently shown is that we're not like most people, that we're actually the faction of individuals that have decided to, instead of backing away from it or settling for something, to just continue to press on because something that was inside of us said, this is not right, this is not exactly how I remember it. And through that, we've met each other on this path, and this wonderful network, this internet, has allowed us to connect just for this moment. And although it may have different designs and different intentions, it has done something. And so the first gesture that I wanted to make to everyone is wholeness and balance, and definitely a heartfelt thank you to everyone for being here. We started this about a month ago in regards to talking about how to activate, and that we were going to just take that apart, because what we wanted to do is we wanted to have an A to Z of what a person should do to activate. And this pretty much required us to talk about and become masters of the mind, the body, and the soul. And that these three areas had to be catered to in order for a person to reach this higher state of consciousness. So first we began to deliver information to the mind. We gave people the cipher, and then we allowed them to take apart the language and understand what the words are really saying. And this in turn began to unwind their minds. It began to take them to another level in regards to understanding exactly what's taking place here and what's happening. So from there, we moved into the body. After the Cult in the Matrix was written, we continued the Resistance 2010 website and began to talk about methods of activation, such as MMS and many different things that we discovered along the path to be real remedies to the ailments that plague us every day. But we still got deeper and deeper. We continued to go into fringe, and we continued to press forward until we finally came into the knowledge of the universal language and cymatics. We got deeper into the etymology of Kabbalah and what words really mean, all the while still keeping this desire inside to want to press forward and want to know more rather than whatever we were uncovering, which started to get very strange, may daunt us in one way or another. So with the body, we began to work on it. We began to offer it what it needs to survive, and we began to treat it like they say even in some of the ancient texts that you should always take care of your camel because you have to ride on it. And so this is the same thing. We had to learn how to take care of our bodies. And then finally we stopped at the soul. And we started to discover the soul had an entirely different story. The story had stretched back across aeons, across the universe, and that the mysteries that had been uncovered within the soul were just phenomenal to even be able to comprehend. And I would tell man and woman this, that the true free energy is the free energy for the body, organisms that are feeding and leaching from the body. And those organisms in turn are actually causing us to slow down in vibration. Once we begin to slow down in vibration, then we enter into a whole vibratory frequency and we're able to be netted or sheathed inside of more dense bodies. So let me just explain it as such. Everyone, if you could just hold the line for me, I'm just going to do a quick sound check. Okay, I'm just going to switch microphones here because I was getting a little feedback. So basically, I'm glad we're 10 minutes into the show because there's a lot that needs to really be brought forth here. Also, you have to understand that I've come into a lot of information within just the last 3 days alone, and that information has me just charged with the energy of understanding and understanding. However, my mind is still calculating the ramifications of information and exactly what needs to be done. And so the first thing is definitely that people need to know exactly what's going on so that they can prepare themselves and that they have a reason to actually prepare themselves. So basically underneath the microscope we discover all of the pathogens. I think a little bit too loud here, but underneath the microscope we discover all the pathogens. And many of those pathogens that we actually see are the same images of the pictures drawn from demons, because those pictures can be seen under the microscope also when you look at distorted forms. And so it would be the same thing as cymatics. If you take the negative frequency of a disease and you play it until you see an image, oftentimes you'll see very ghostly, ghastly images that are sometimes associated with our horror. So pictures actually emanate a frequency also, and a color, etc. It's all tied in. And so basically there was a lot of work to be done, and men have crossed many planes in order to give us the information of how to eradicate the pestilence from the body so that they stop plaguing our mind and manifesting themselves in our physical reality, because once we are affected internally, we then project whatever we feel internally outwardly. And so that for the real car or the ark. And until that comes to our world, we will always have the frequencies that plague us, the lower frequencies. And that's here now. And we plan on introducing that to everyone. And so what I wanted to first talk about, I'm getting folks a little closer to the mic here. But what I wanted to first talk about is I wanted to talk about the solution. For those that have already logged into the website, www.resistance2010.com, and seen the post for today, which was how to overcome aliens, Archon, and the physical prison. Many people have already run through that post and ingested that information. And so we'll be talking and speaking to those people first in the first part of this the show, which is scheduled for an hour and a half. And what I'm saying in regards to that is that we covered in detail the problem. So we'll begin the show with starting the solution, because I personally believe that the solution exists before the problem. So this goes into stories about men that were discovering that our true enemy was underneath the microscope, that our bodies and our health and our conditioning govern everything about us, that if we felt sick, we couldn't get up in the morning, we couldn't be happy, we couldn't do various things that would accompany a healthy person. So in the beginning, it started when talking about medicine and things of that nature, men always refer to it more on a spiritual level because it has the ability to affect your spiritual being. Your health has the ability to affect your spiritual being. And so people that have continuously practiced bad health have been under the illusion or sedation of several types of psychotropic substances, some even calibrated down to the nano, that affect the mind and the states of consciousness, but yet the human body still continues to show an immunity to these plagues. The human body shows resilience in a company with a soul that it wants to survive. And so as we begin to adapt to these pathogens and these problems, and I will say we've definitely gotten a lot stronger now, so too the problem began to adapt itself. The pathogen itself, as they call it, began to be adapted to the host, meaning understanding how to drain a large amount of energy from the host without killing the host, because that will not benefit the pathogen. So what we find is in our body that there are multiple